I'd like to open this formal meeting of the Coralville City Council, March 26, 2019, with a roll call.
Councilmember Foster.
Present.
Gross. Gill.
Present.
Dodds.
Present.
Goodrich.
Here.
Okay, 4 of the 5 council members are present. Councilor Mitch Gross texted me right before the meeting. He is coming. He'll just be a few minutes late. The mayor is obviously here, as is the city clerk, city administrator, city attorney, and several city staff in the audience. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gill, seconded by Goodrich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. First item I'd like to do is to issue a proclamation regarding National Service Recognition Day, and I'd like to read this, please. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of American character and central to how we meet our challenges, and whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our cities, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century and supporting veterans and military families in providing health services and helping communities recover from natural disasters, and whereas natural services expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 70,000 locations across the country, including here in Johnson County, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. And whereas National Service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on the taxpayers' dollars. And whereas National Service participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And whereas the Corporation for the National and Community Service share a priority with mayors nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, the City of Service, and the mayors across the country to recognize the impact of service on the Mayor's Day of Recognition for the National Service on April 2nd, 2019. Now therefore I, John A. Lundell, Mayor of the City of Coralville, do hereby proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day in the City of Coralville, and I urge all citizens to recognize the positive impact of national service in our city, to thank those who serve, and to find ways to give back to their communities. Signed this 26th day of March 2019, John A. Lundell, Mayor. We have several representatives in the audience to receive this proclamation. I would invite one or all to come on up and receive it, and then say a few words if you'd like, and then we can do a picture too, if that's what you'd like. Thank you very much. Yeah, please introduce yourself and your colleagues.
First of all, Mayor Lindell, council members, other city officials, thank you for having us here. We appreciate it. My name is Alex Linden. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista member with Shelter House, and I'm joined here by my colleagues Kaylee Horde and Mackenzie Fields. Mackenzie is another AmeriCorps Vista member, and then we have another AmeriCorps Vista member serving at Shelter House named Haley Franzen. She was not able to be with us tonight, but she's also excited to hear about this proclamation. Today's a great day, not only because it's National Service Recognition Day. Well, we're using today as that, but it's also my birthday, so
happy birthday.
nothing more I'd want to do than to be here. So, but yeah, so my name's Alex. I graduated from the University of Iowa in May. In my 4 years at Iowa, I studied biochemistry. So I learned all the enzymatic reactions happening within our body. I learned human metabolism, and I studied proteins, basically proteins. And so upon graduation in May, there was nothing more I wanted to do than go work at a homeless shelter. It's a joke. I really didn't plan on using my degree at all after I graduated. Why? Because while attending a public university, moving to a city that's much more diverse than Sioux City, Iowa, where I'm from, a city that's much more engaged than some of my high school classmates and the folks that I knew. Moving to a city and a community, Eastern Iowa, Coralville, North Liberty, Cedar Rapids, going back and forth between different communities here in Eastern Iowa, I began to understand the importance of being engaged in your community and the importance of civic duty. And so I got my degree. I told my parents I wasn't going to use it and that it's just good for trivia nights. And I said, I'm going to commit the rest of my life to helping others and building community. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I had a meeting with the school advisor, and she said, you should look at AmeriCorps. A week later, I applied, and a week after that, I had a phone call with Mark Cedars, and then a week after that, I met with Kaylee and Mark, and then I had a commitment for a year serving AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps Vista specifically is volunteers in service to America, and I truly do feel like I am serving my country, but more importantly, I'm serving my local community. And I've learned the importance of civic duty, civic engagement, and through this year of service, and I'm sure I can speak on behalf of our other two members at Shelter House, but it has only taught me life lessons that, like you had mentioned, I'm going to carry on in the future. And so thank you, everybody, for recognizing what we do. I really hope AmeriCorps can continue to grow. It was something I never heard of until a month before I was in it, but now I talk about it all the time, and my friends have actually asked me how they can get involved. So this only highlights the importance of it more, so continue to do what you do. Looks like you guys got a busy agenda. Enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Did you want a picture, or you're good?
Yeah.
Use that picture as a birthday to remember.
Yeah.
Who's taking Who's taking it? Somebody.
We need a photographer. Say, where's Deb?
You said where's?
Good call.
Who knows if he's going to use that picture?
I didn't have my finger in front of me.
But I think also,
There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
maybe this too. So much energy.
Very good. Okay, item 5 is citizen comments. This is the item on the agenda for anyone that would like to speak on something that's not already on the agenda later on. Does anyone like to speak to us tonight about something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to item 6, which is Lot 1, Cedars 4th Edition. This is the first consideration of an ordinance that rezones a 6.88 acre lot north of Heartland Drive near Taco Bell to CPUD 2 in order to build a 40-bed, 2-story rehabilitation hospital. Jim Kessler, our building official, will give us a building department report and P&Z report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just give you part of my report, and then the gentleman from
Okay.
Mercy here do a much more thorough job than I
Sure.
would, and then when they're done, I'll give you the P&Z report if that works for everybody.
Works for me.
Okay. The only thing I will really show you tonight, as far as I'm concerned, is the rezoning area. It's being actually rezoned from C2 to a CPUD in order to put the rehabilitation hospital there. It'll be given to you a little bit later, but this is basically to the west of the Mercy Complex that's already there on Heartland Drive and the Taco Bell site. So this is the rezoning that we'll be looking at tonight. And then if you'd like to.
Yeah, we have a couple gentlemen, architects,
Certainly.
if
I'll have
I say that right.
my counterpart fill out that form with our names. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for this opportunity to present our project, Mercy Rehabilitation Hospital, Iowa City, in partnership and joint venture with Kindred Healthcare. I'd like to take a moment just to briefly explain the hospital, kind of how it operates, and then I'll have my counterpart, my architect, who designed the hospital, Matt Manning, come up and present a few details regarding the design and answer a few questions if you have questions. But I'd like to start out by saying rehab care hospitals offer an environment of intensive therapy which helps a patient go home sooner with a minimum of 3 hours per day therapy and daily access to physician special trained rehab. This contributes to higher recovery rates, education, and training. The care is designed to help improve a patient's ability to return home to a normal life and maximizing independence. So the hospital has a special wing for stroke rehabilitation, neurological rehabilitation, and orthopedic rehabilitation, among general rehabilitation needs for acute patients who require up to 20 days of care at a time. The rehabilitation hospital offers interdisciplinary care management and 24-hour physician-supported medical care. And the rehabilitation teams and the facility is driven to help each patient get stronger and more independent, recover more rapidly, and return home. The well-trained therapists provide medically necessary rehabilitation care to bring about recovery and improve function while supporting the highest quality of life possible. We're really looking forward to the opportunity to build in your hometown of Coralville, Iowa, and this facility will advance the care and needs of patients. I'd like to introduce Matt Manning to come up and go over the details of the design. If there's no further questions about the operational part of the hospital, if you have questions, I'll be glad to help answer those. Yeah. Also have Casey Green with us from Mercy to support, and he's been such a great support for our team.
I'm just curious if you could give us maybe a little update. I try to find out of how many employees this will have and what kind of breakdown of from RNs, LPNs, therapists, things like that. If you have that kind of data.
Casey?
Yeah, I can cover some of that. I'm not going to rattle it all off the top of my head.
Sure.
It'll bring about 200 construction
Go to the microphone,
jobs.
please.
It'll bring about 200 construction jobs to the area during the build, and once completed, about 150 FTEs, largely focused on physical therapy type employees, but it will employ RNs and others as well. A couple things about it. It's a 40-bed facility, but the way that we're building this, we're actually allocating 40 beds from Mercy, Iowa City to this facility. So we're not increasing the bed count in Johnson County. We thought that was important. As you probably know, Mercy's been here for 165 plus years, fully dedicated to this community and the patients from Southeast Iowa. So this hospital is meant to serve those patients from out Southeast Iowa at 10 county service area that Mercy serves today, and obviously serving them patients. And the whole purpose of this is to move them from an inpatient setting to a more appropriate inpatient rehab facility like this, where they can get back on their feet, get back to the state of recovery that they need. They'll be there up to 28 days, but it serves a different population than the skilled nursing facilities. These patients today are in a hospital, in an inpatient hospital, which is more expensive to the patient and more expensive to us as the facility. So really looking forward to joining Kindred in this venture. It's not something we've done before as a hospital, so that's why we partnered with Kindred, who's done this throughout the state of Iowa and throughout the country. We're actually replicating a model that they have in place in Clive today. They have a 50-bed, the first 50-bed freestanding hospitals in Clive. So we're taking that model and moving it over here to Iowa City. Just a quick summary.
Thank you. Yep.
More than what you asked.
No, it's perfect.
So good evening. I'm Matthew Manning. I'm a principal with ESA. We're an architecture firm based in Nashville, Tennessee. We specialize in healthcare design all over the country, with a primary focus in the southeast and kind of the middle part of the country, but we do work from coast to coast, really. Our experience goes back approximately 10 or 12 years with Kindred and a predecessor that actually Kindred purchased that focused in the development of the rehabilitation hospitals. So the rehabilitation hospital that you see here today is really an exercise in really looking at the best practices that we found over those last 12 years in approximately 20 facilities that we've designed for them. So this is an evolutionary design focused on being more comfortable to the patient, integrated into the community a bit more. A lot of times when people hear hospital, they think of a large institutional structure. These are a much smaller scale. The patients are typically there 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So we want it to feel more comfortable to the patient and be an amenity to the community. So speaking specifically to this project, the property that we're looking at is just to the west of the Mercy office building that's currently there, and just to the west of the Taco Bell. There's the cul-de-sac, or the circle that you see, traffic circle that you see there. There's a driveway just to the north of that. That driveway will be demoed, and we'll actually be creating a driveway off of the spur to the northwest, I guess that would be. I always have to think about my directions when I'm speaking publicly. So the property is really the parcel just to the north of that traffic circle. The site plan you see here, the traffic circle is at the bottom of the screen. That little bite that you see out is where that existing curb cut is that will be going away. The facility itself is approximately 50,000 square feet. The total of 40 beds. The parking count is approximately 120 spaces. I think it's actually 117 to be exact. Parking is zoned to the front of the property primarily for visitors and guests, and then the staff parking will circulate around to the side and to the back. The primary entrance is on the south side, so main entrance located there. There is a fire loop road that runs around the perimeter of the building for fire department access. Building itself is a total of 2 stories. So it's well under the allowable height limit, which I think is 45 feet. Typically these run in the 35-foot range to the highest point of the structure, more or less. Service is located to the back of the building on the north side. Just on that north east wing. There's a little bit of ground-mounted equipment that's just to the east of that will be screened with a screen wall that matches the building itself. The area between the 2 wings is an outdoor therapy courtyard garden for the patients. Basically, this is a place where they can go outside and enjoy the weather, but it also gives them opportunities for balance therapy. Things like a basketball goal are there, putting green, some shade structures, some benches, some simulated curb cuts, ramps, stairs, whatnot, things that you really need to, as you're going through the rehabilitation process, to get back into the community as a whole on an outside basis. So the right side of the site of the building, I should say, is the gym and administrative spaces, and then the left side is the patient rooms over to the side where the fire loop is. If we want to go to the next slide, this is showing the proposed planting plan for the facility. You can see the grass and turf runs around the perimeter. A fair amount of shrubbery to meet the minimums required by the city for your landscape, for buffering. There's a hedgerow all the way around the front portion of the site where the parking is facing the traffic circle. And then there's trees and the tree islands for shade in the parking lots. And then enhancements to the landscape around the main entrance, as well as a fair amount of landscape in that therapy courtyard for the enjoyment of the residents or patients in the facility. Any specific questions on the site plan that I could answer? Maybe easier to hit those now.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. We are really happy to see this facility here.
Then I'll talk a lot less then.
And so it's fantastic, and you're meeting all the guidelines that our building department is asking for.
Great.
And we can hardly wait for it to get constructed, so.
Awesome.
You know, I really don't have any questions. It's just that I wish we had more.
Oh,
That's-
well,
And we're going to get more.
And we are going to get
I'm sure you
more.
will. I'm sure you will.
So,
So this is showing the floor plan, if you're
Okay.
interested in any of the details there.
I am interested in that just a little bit. I spent all of last week at Mercy in various departments.
Okay.
Exemplary care, by the way. I'm pretty happy with everything, all the way from fourth floor to ICU and surgical in between. But I was very happy that, this was with my dad, that we were in a private room decreasing the communicable disease transmission potential, which is very important, I think, in especially the elderly and those that are in rehab. And I wondered if that was going to be carried through into this building, or if it's going to be more than one in a room, or?
No, all of the rooms are private rooms. So all of them have handicapped accessible showers. The bathrooms are fully handicapped accessible. Really, we're wanting to create an environment where the patient can thrive and can get home as quick as possible.
That's great. And then when you said the physician, is that going to be like a hospitalist type of thing during their stay versus their regular physicians, or how does that work?
The physician coverage, I may speak a little bit out of turn. I'm going to let.
Yeah, it'll be an open staff, so we'll have a medical director there, but physicians from throughout the community, will be able to see their patients at the facility. So not restricted in any way to a certain type of physician or just physicians that are employed by the facility.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
One of the other key components here is the dark green and the light green block that you see on the first floor there is the cafeteria. It's a cafe servery. The model is designed to really have kind of a nice open feel. They encourage staff to be able to sit down and be able to eat with the patients, to really kind of create and foster relationships and really create a support network. A lot of times you think of being in a hospital and you typically eat sitting in your hospital bed. That's not the process here. The idea is we want to create the opportunity for patients to walk down the hall. Just walking to get dinner is in some ways therapeutic to the various patients in the population in the facility. So, we want to make it feel as good as possible. I'd say it's almost like a frat house for those in need of rehab, but that might take on a different connotation. From an exterior perspective, the elevations were submitted showing the materials in compliance with the local code. I think the elevations are a bit of a boring way to look at it. The more exciting images are the last two images in our presentation, and also the two boards that you see here that show the exterior rendering. The first one is, actually that's the back, but that's looking at from the back into the therapy courtyard. So you can see the therapy gym to the left-hand side with a large glass curtain wall system that allows a lot of daylight into that therapy area, and you can start to see a little bit of the amenities in the therapy courtyard from this view. And then the other view is really what you'll see more from the front. This is from within the parking lot, but essentially what you would see from the traffic circle from the street. The main drop-off canopy is located here at the front door. The dining area has a small outdoor dining space, which is what you see to the right of the front door. And then the patient rooms, you start to see the glass openings. We're very generous with the windows in the patient rooms. We feel like the providing as much daylight is really important to the care of the patients. Anybody that's ever been in a patient room that has a tiny little window can understand how awful that can feel. So these are really generous windows to allow as much light in as possible. The last thing I'd add, just because of this slide, is a lot of times there's questions of ambulance traffic. Most of the ambulances coming here are just transporting the patients from another facility. And when they do come here, they're not coming in with sirens blazing and whatnot. one of the beautiful things I think about the way that Kindred operates is the ambulance actually comes to the front door. And the ambulance parks underneath that main entrance canopy, and that's where the patient comes in for the first time. So they're experiencing the building the same way their families and their friends and their loved ones will come to the facility. So I think that it's sometimes hard to explain that to people because that's not what you think of when you think of an ambulance. But I think it's really respectful of the patients and their families, and really shows the effort that the provider really puts forth to support the patient's needs. That's about all I could tell you.
My only question is, what's your timeline for breaking ground and completion?
So we would like to break ground as soon as physically possible. I think within the next month.
Yeah, we'd like to break ground right after approval of the next reading.
Mhm.
We are hoping to combine the second and third readings of the council, and we're ready to go when you're ready to go.
Okay. And then completion would be
11 months.
11 months. Okay.
Yeah, then we'll have a move-in month. We'll have a move-in
So,
month.
year
11 months
later.
construction, then
Yeah.
move-in and training and operational certain procedures.
Sure. Good.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Jim, would you like to finish your report?
Yeah, this was on the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting earlier this month, and there were 5 members present, and it was a unanimous vote for recommendation for approval by the council.
Okay, thank you very much. So now is a time for the actual official public hearing. So I will open the public hearing and ask if there are any comments on this proposed rezoning or ordinance. Any comments? Any written comments?
No written.
Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for first consideration of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2019-1002, an ordinance amending the Coralville zoning ordinance, the same being ordinance number 664 as previously amended, rezoning certain property located within the corporate limits of the city of Coralville, Johnson County, Iowa, and generally known as Lot 1, Cedars 4th Edition, from C2 Arterial Commercial District to CPUD2 Commercial Planned Unit Development 2 District, introduced for adoption, first consideration by Councilmember Foster, seconded by.
Second. Seconded by Gross. Discussion? Roll call.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill. Aye. Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Ordinance passes its first consideration, all ayes, and it was mentioned, we will entertain collapsing the second and third reading at our next council meeting in 2 weeks. So,
You want a motion now?
no, we'll do it at the next one.
We'll set the agenda up that way for next time. then.
Okay, thanks. Very good. Okay, moving on. Item number 7 is the Iowa River Landing Parkview. This rezones a 9.99 acre piece of property east of the Von Mauer store from RPUD1 or to RPUD1 for proposed development with 4 multifamily buildings, total of 202 units. And I'll let Jim give the building department report and P&Z report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you see on the screen now is the actual rezoning area from C2 to an RPUD, residential planned unit development. This is the east parking lot of the Von Mauer store, so this is directly to the east of the Von Mauer department store. And actually, this is the Iowa River and Interstate 80 on the north. So that is the rezoning. The preliminary plat, as we go through this, as you said, it is, it's actually 6 lots at this point. I know when I wrote your memo, which was early on, I think it had 7 lots on there. There used to be 7 lots. This building number 5 was split into 2 lots. We've been through several renditions of this, and I believe we have the final one before us now. That's the one we're acting on anyhow. But it is 7 lots. Lot number 1, lot number, 2, lot number 3, lot number 5, and lot number 6. I'm sorry, lot number 3, lot number 4 are all 3-story residential apartment houses. Lot number 1 is a 42-unit building. Lot number 2 is a 54-unit building. Lot number 3 is 70 units, and lot number 4 is 36 units. Each one of these units, as we move on to the site plan, yeah, it takes us a while to get there is all. Each one of these units has underground parking, and if it's a 70-unit building, it has 70 spaces underground. So each of the 4 buildings has 1 space per apartment unit of underground parking. And then the rest of the parking that they would need would be surface parking. So as I said, these are the 4 apartment buildings. This is a continuation of Iowa River Landing Place, the street that goes east and west in the IRL. It comes around, comes here, comes to this way, comes back down here on Quarry Lane. So this actually shaded area right here that I'm showing you is a public street. From there on, the public street turns into a private egress road for emergency access and vehicles only. There's an agreement with Von Maur that this ingress and egress road will actually go through Von Maur's parking lot right east of their east entrance or their east parking lot. They have an access easement to do that. So the major entrance in and out of this will be Iowa River Landing Place with its intersection of Quarry Road right here. So we have private streets here, and then they end in a public street, a private road takes over for emergency access. I didn't mention Outlot A. Outlot A is part of this plat. That is going to be a public park. It will be ran by the city and operated by the city. It'll be open to the public as well. So that is the site plan and how it's going to operate. Oh, I will say that there is another outlet B down here. This location here is actually a stormwater pump station of the city's. This is a bioretention cell, so this will be an outlet that belongs to the city as well.
Jim, are these mostly rental units or
These are
purchase?
rental units, yes.
Lot 5, can you talk about Lot 5?
Oh, all right. Lot 5 is actually separate development from the 4 lots that we're talking about now.
Okay.
It is 55 and older, independent living as well. Lot number 5 is actually, and we'll see that when I'll go to the elevation images of this. Lot number 5 is actually 5 stories and 5 stories, and in the middle they have just a little 2-story area that is common to both of the buildings, like a common entrance, common lobby, and what have you to these 2 buildings. They also, in lot number 6, is part of the lot number 5 development. That's a 5-story building also, and it has 50 dwelling units in it. So there's a total of 170 dwelling units here. There's a total of 202 dwelling units in the other 4 lots. So you add those together, and that's quite a few dwelling units down there. This also has underground parking. You can see the entrance to it here. This underground parking actually goes all the way through lot number 5 and also comes underground into lot number 6. So they all have underground parking. And this is the main entrance to it. This is another entrance to it. It was going to be just basically a entrance into lot number 6 parking, but they're going to widen this out and make it so it will be a full in and out entrance to all of the underground parking between those 3 buildings.
Has there been any conversations yet about what type of park that's going to be, or is it still too early to
I don't believe they've
have it?
even
Yeah.
designed the park or thought about the design of the park. If they have, I'm not aware of it, no.
Jim, we discussed earlier just concerns about emergency vehicle access, so can you explain it to me again? So it's going to be a gated entrance, or how's that going to work if an emergency vehicle needs to get
Well,
back?
the fire chief and us have had, and everybody's had a lot of discussion about that. We talked about using bollards, you know, the drive-over type bollards, which wouldn't be anything big deal for an emergency vehicle to drive over them. But in case this was blocked and the only way the residents had to get out was this way, that would pretty much tear up the underside of their cars. So I think at this point in time, we're talking about using gates on it. You know, one way to do that is with a Knox box, like the fire department does for a building. You put a Knox box on it, and they have a key to it to open the gates. I think that's still a point of discussion for us. because that would not be readily accessed for the residents that were down here. If they had to get out in a hurry or something like that happened, they wouldn't have any way into that Knox box. They wouldn't have a key to the box. So that's kind of a work in progress at this point. But it would be the only other way out through here, so.
And did you say 5 and 6 are 55 and older? Is that,
That's what I understand, yes.
so the other
Yeah, there's a-
buildings can have kids? Are we, what school district?
It's just for anybody. It's open.
So what's, do you know what school district this would be in?
No, I wouldn't even hazard a guess.
You mean like what, elementary school?
Yeah.
No.
Coralville Central, isn't it?
Would it
I
be
would think-
Central or not?
Or would it be
Wickham.
Lincoln?
Or Lincoln?
Lincoln.
I guess we don't know.
Guess we don't know.
It's not
Yeah.
central. First Avenue is buying one.
It might be Lincoln.
So that, on the other side of First Avenue, it's not Coralville Central?
I don't think so.
Hmm.
It's either Wickham or Lincoln.
We'll have to get you the answer to that.
I guess so.
We'll
Yeah.
have to research it. We know somebody that might know the answer.
It'll probably change in a week anyway, so.
Yeah.
Exactly, I was gonna say that.
You're way over me when you're talking school districts, so.
I was just curious about busing and things like that, so.
So, as they develop this, they're gonna develop it in phases. So the only final plating, what they're gonna develop at the time, the first building they're gonna be would be building number 1 and its associated parking. And they're also plating this portion of IRL Place and Quarry Lane, the public street, in order to have access to this. So this would be the final plat that we would plat. And then as they progress, they'll plat the other lots as they go. Then, so this would be the western homes, or the lot, or buildings 5 and 6 that we talked about. These, as I said, are 5-story buildings. These, and this is the area in between them. Actually, it's more of a story, a little more than a story, actually. These two buildings together would be the 120 units, or 60 units per building, 5 stories high. I don't know that I have a really good picture of how they tie together. Well, so this would be buildings, this would be lot number 5 with a tie in between them, and this would be the 50-unit building on lot number 6. There is talk, I don't know if it's finalized or not yet, that there will be a walkway between these two buildings, so that the buildings in, excuse me, on lot number 6 can get into the building number 5 without having to go outdoors to do it. So there is talk about a skyway. These buildings aren't tied together in any way. They're separate buildings, but they are talking about putting a skywalk between them. And then these would be the lots 1 through 4 buildings. They are all 3-story buildings with underground parking. This parking is mostly underground. It is a little bit above the ground as well. You can see the entrance to it is right here. So this much of the parking on this level right here is exposed, or is above grade. The rest of it's below grade. So this is a typical view of the other apartment houses, the 3-story buildings. This is a back view of it. And this is the end view of the buildings. They'll all be like buildings, just different sizes.
Is that unusual to have that number of doors? Are they all free access for anybody who lives there?
Here?
No.
Oh, you mean on the
then-
front? I couldn't
Yeah.
resist.
It just seems different to me.
Well, they're all lobby doors. Some of these I don't really know the layout of the building yet. We haven't really seen it yet.
Okay.
These on the ends would be elevator doors. They'd be elevators. They'd be exits and entrances.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the units have direct access and
Yeah.
have a patio outside them on the first floor. So
Oh, okay.
that's, some of those
I
are,
see.
there's one that's the main lobby, and the rest of them would be the individual units.
Okay.
This
You think
this
it's
would be above the
security?
garage door and down to the underground parking, so. This is just the layout of the garage. There's typical one-bedroom, two-bedroom units in these. So, yeah, that's all I have on the building. So anyhow, this also was on P&Z at the last meeting, also recommended for approval by a 5-0 vote.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Mhm.
Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing now on this rezoning. Are there any comments from the audience on this project? Yes.
Good evening.
Right.
Brian Belk, Axiom Consultants, engineer for this project, and here representing IRL Development, Parkview Investments. Just really here to answer any other questions you may have. Jim did a great job going through the project. I will answer that question in regards to the doors. Yeah, those doors do provide, as Kelly said, direct access to those units. You could see that on that floor plan there too, I think in the later pages. But if there's any other questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any written comments?
No, Richard.
I just wondered why the walkway between the buildings, are there like amenities in the buildings that they would share, or what was the?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is to keep that indoor connectivity between the buildings with some shared amenities. That would be like a gathering area for people to eat, play cards, whatever, and yeah, have that joined connectivity, similar to what Jim was mentioning between this building and the separate building. As discussed, there is talk of that skywalk connection there too, in particular for the winter weather and conditions. On a nice summer day, obviously they could cross, the green space there as well with some sidewalks, but otherwise providing that connectivity indoors too.
Thank you.
Any written comments?
No, Richard.
Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing and first consideration of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2019-1003, an ordinance amending the Coralville zoning ordinance, excuse me, the same being ordinance number 664 as previously amended, rezoning certain property located within the corporate limits of the city of Coralville, Johnson County, Iowa, and generally known as Auditor's Parcel 2018111, part of Outlot B, Iowa River Landing, Part 5, and part of Outlot C, Coralville Hotel and Convention Center, first edition, from C2 Arterial Commercial District to RPUD 1 Residential Planned Unit Development 1 District, introduced for adoption, first consideration by Councilmember Gross, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Gill. Discussion? I just have one question, it's a process question. Since this is just phase one, that initial piece, they will the applicant will have to come back for additional action for future phases then?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So,
They'll have a plating, and
They're
then
only
each lot will have a
plating
site
and
plan
all.
too.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. Okay.
The
Just wanna make that clear.
the building of materials and everything will be consistent, so they won't have to rezone every time, but they'll have to have a site plan every plot and
next phase, yeah.
and a plat every time.
Yeah, that's what I thought, thank you.
I'd like to thank the developer and the building department. They've done a nice job, very nice job.
Roll call?
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye. First consideration passes all ayes. Yep, thank you very much. Item 8 is the Redhawk project. Gee, I can't talk tonight. This will change the land use from medium-density residential for a 22.9 acre lot north of the Iowa Medical Classification Center in the west side of Coral Ridge Avenue, which will allow the development of another multifamily complex comprised of 10 36-unit buildings. A clubhouse, swimming pool is also included. Item A and B is the building department and P&Z report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The land use amendment is, what we're looking at is the orange portion of this area here. At the present time, this is corridor commercial land use, so it's all commercial land use. The applicant is asking that this portion of it, or this, I think it's about 23 acres of this, is actually changed from corridor commercial to medium-density residential to be developed as residential. So the rest of this will remain corridor commercial to be developed as commercial ground. So what they're asking to do is just take this portion of it and changing the land use amendment at this point to residential, medium-density residential use. If this should be successful, then of course they'll have to come back and rezone it and do all the site plans and all of the other issues. I will show you one more thing, I hope, so that you know what you're changing the land use for. So this is just a concept of what the development could be out there that it was presented to us. So there's 10 36-unit apartment houses with 360 units. There is a swimming pool, there is a clubhouse, there is a Circle Drive. There is also the street coming down this way, which will be an access from Wheaton Road on the north, and eventually University Parkway extending on the south. So that will be an access point from these residences here to get over to these commercial areas here. This we're not looking, this is just a concept plan I'm showing you, so I know you kind of like to know what you're changing the land use for. So that's what the concept we're looking at this point. This also was on P&Z and recommended for a 5-0 vote for approval.
Okay. Item C is a public hearing on this project. Open a public hearing. Are there any comments? Yes.
Hi, John Marner with MMS Consultants representing the applicant, Mark Avis, for this. Jim did a great job. I don't really have anything to add. I'm available for any questions. If you have any further questions about the site plan, I don't know if, Jim, if you could put the site plan back up for a second.
The area to the east, is that planned to be commercial?
Yes, so there's going to be a public right-of-way that'll run north-south from, it's Wheaton Road. And I think you're finishing up city's just finished up the intersection improvements on that this spring. That's Wheaton Road at the north. That'll be a public road that runs north-south on the east side of the multifamily residential, and it'll be on the back side of the commercial property. So all of the commercial properties will have access from that road, not from Coral Ridge Avenue.
So my question kind of ties into that. So access to that remaining land south of this project would be just from Wheaton Avenue? It'd be very deep lot then, yeah.
But there's
Are you speaking here?
There'll be a University Parkway is an arterial street that will be going on the south side.
The very south side of it,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Okay,
This is showing a portion of the extension of it.
okay.
Great.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Any written comments?
No, Richard.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and consider the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2019-1004, an ordinance amending the Coralville Community Plan to reflect certain property generally known as a portion of the southeast quarter, southwest quarter, section 24, township 80 north, range 7 west, Coralville, Iowa, to be designated medium-density residential use in place of corridor commercial use, introduced for adoption, first consideration by Councilmember Gill, seconded by.
Second.
Second by Dodds. Discussion? Roll call.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
I have to go fast.
Ordinance passes its first consideration, all ayes. Thank you. Okay, item 9 is multiple properties located within the Coralville corporate limits of the city of Coralville, south of I-80, west of First Avenue, north of Fifth Street, and east of 20th Avenue Place. This is a large rezoning to make the primary types of existing homes in these areas compatible to the city's existing zoning classifications. Jim, the building and P&Z report, please.
Thank you. I put the map up for you to see, and I think this is the best way to explain which properties are involved and what we're doing. Anything that you see in the red, like this, along here, and a little bit over here, is the areas that we are proposing to rezone from R2 to R1. Anything that is green, this green, is R3 at the present time, is staying R3. R3 to R1, we're doing a little bit of changing from R3 to R1 here, and there's one lone little lot here that for some reason has always been R3, so that's being changed to R1 as well. And the brown is R4, and it's changing to R4. So the bulk of the rezonings that we're proposing is actually the red, which is at this point zoned R2. It is primarily R1 use at this point in time. Just one quick little bit of information for you. We sent out 156 letters to actual property owners that are being rezoned, and only 34 of those properties are actually being used as duplexes at this time. So it's zoned R2. It's 154 some units that are being used as R1. So that is, you know, trying to keep the zoning classification in line with what the actual use of the property is. And the bulk of it is single-family use and zoned R2 at this point. This was on P&Z at the last meeting and recommended for approval by the council by a 5-0 vote.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Is there anything more you'd like to add, the history of this project or anything, or?
Well, yeah.
Before we do the public hearing?
A couple of things. First, the reason to remember of how this would have happened is the old zoning code that was changed many years ago allowed for progressive zoning. So if you had an R2 zone, you could build an R1 or a single family or a duplex. If you was R3, you could have built single family duplexes, or you could have built multifamily. And so that's how that would have occurred. And so you had all these single families that were built in a duplex area. Our new zoning code that was adopted several years ago separated that, and if you have an R1 zone, you have to build single family. If you have an R2 zone, you have to build duplexes. It doesn't allow for the other unless you do a planned unit development. And you could do a planned unit development and then you could change that. So that was how this originally, the issue occurred. This was part of a discussion that the council had as part of the goal setting session that you all requested that this be considered, and so this has been worked on for over a year time, trying to figure out how best to approach this. And there's been multiple discussions with planning and zoning, and then, as Jim noted, all the letters went out to all the different homeowners. So that's just a little bit of the history of where we got today.
And then how about a little bit on the intent or the philosophy behind, you know, this change in terms of preserving the neighborhood character?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously one of the key notes is that, you know, to preserve the neighborhood and hopefully continue with the great housing stock that's in those neighborhoods. And we've seen a few, not a lot, of areas where there'll be single family and then a duplex will be built across the street. An old one will be torn down. We've seen a few of those, especially on the eastern part of this area. And so this just lets all of the neighbors know exactly what's going to be next door to them, you know, and if it's a single family today, it's going to stay single family, and that somebody wouldn't come in, because you would have the right currently. If you had a whole street of single family, or in the one case on is it Fifth Avenue or Fourth Avenue, Jim, that leads up to Coralville Central?
Fifth Avenue.
Oh,
Fifth Avenue.
yeah.
Yeah, there's, that's an R3 area, and those are all single family areas, so somebody could actually come in and take one of the houses down and build a threeplex, for example.
Take
So-
the whole street, the whole side of the street.
Yeah, so it just gives each, you know, all of the neighbors a better understanding of what's going to be there.
I think another goal is these are historic 1950s, 60s houses. They're basic houses, and they're affordable houses. And we're trying to have an R1 affordable house, starter house, senior living house, but an R1 house. And we have a lot of rental housing. We've got a lot of condos, and we're just trying to keep a basic mix of housing in our area.
And that's one of the parts that's really important to me, is that a lot of those homes are just ideal for a young family that's just starting out. They're wonderful little homes. They're by the school, they're by parks or within walking distance. And I used to live in the neighborhood by Coralville Central. And I think it's really important that, we, like you said, Tom, that we have a lot of these apartment-type homes, we have a lot of these townhome-type homes, and that we're finding a way to add that affordable housing stock with a single-family focus.
Right. And it'll stabilize the community. I
Yeah.
mean, it'll stabilize the neighborhood. It gives somebody, it gives them a home, and they own the home and take care of it.
Okay, well, with that introduction, I will open the public hearing, and anyone who'd like to speak to this, please introduce yourself and sign in, and try and limit your comments to 5 minutes if you could, please.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jeff Connor. I live at 2004 20th Avenue Place, which is in the little neighborhood that's on the upper left there. And I live in a duplex in this neighborhood, and mine is one of the ones that is going to be rezoned as R1. And basically, I'd like my property to be removed from this rezoning plan. Based on what I've heard for the purpose here, in terms of maintaining the neighborhoods as they are right now, in terms of making sure that somebody doesn't come in and develop duplexes in these areas that are single-family homes. I don't think that removing my neighborhood or my property from this list really affects that as a stated goal. I think that you could still accomplish that goal well without including my property on the list. I also apologize for taking the time of the City Council here. I brought this up at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and I was told that it was not prudent to consider individual properties when they were doing a massive rezoning like this, and that made me feel like I didn't have much of an outlet in terms of communicating my frustration with this, because that's what was happening. It was a massive rezoning, and it doesn't work out well for my house. I understand that for the Planning and Zoning Commission, there are a lot of properties, and they have a lot to get through, and so painting with a large brush, it makes sense. Like, they simply don't have the resources to go in and interview all these families and figure out what works best for them. But given that they let us know to come to these meetings and offer our perspective, I think that it's important that we're allowed to do that and that we're heard when we do that. And so, to give you the history of the place, I've lived in this house my whole life. I'm not a property developer. I'm not planning on doing anything strange with the house. I was born and I came home to this house, and I've lived in it almost the entire time since then, and I plan on living in it into old age if I can. It's a duplex, and so just so you get an idea, there are, in both halves of it, combined, there are 6 bedrooms, there's 3 bathrooms, there's 2 kitchens, there's 2 living rooms, there's 2 rooms we use for storage. If this was converted to a single-family home, it would be too large to be practical that I would live in the entirety of this property. Currently, my father and I live in one half of it. My sister lives in the other half with a roommate, and I understand that would clearly work well if we transitioned into a single-family situation. However, my sister, when she moved into the other half of it, did not agree to live there for her whole life. She's a businesswoman, and she might have a job opportunity which lines up somewhere where she might not want to stay in the property. In the past, we've used this property as rental to try and help cover the cost of maintenance of the property. Again, we don't have lots of properties. We're not land barons. We're just trying to take care of our property here. So what I was told was that our property would be grandfathered in so that we would not have to rebuild it right away as an R1, that it would only be in the event of the destruction of the property. I don't find that very comforting, in that tornadoes and floods and fires are all unexpected things, and I don't want to be sitting around for the rest of my life, as I plan on staying in this house, hoping that some unexpected disaster doesn't come along and render my home dysfunctional. So I simply am not comforted by saying that my property in its current state would be grandfathered in. Let's see what else I have to say here. So I think that this has the potential to come at a great cost to my family. The duplex itself, if it were rezoned as a single-family resident, if it were destroyed partially, the footprint of the house is actually sort of unusual for a single-family home. If we tried to market it as a single-family home, I don't think that it would be very, very appealing to somebody who wanted to move into it because it's got this L shape. And so if it was partially destroyed, 60% of the property of the value, and we had to rebuild it, we'd probably have to rebuild it in the same general shape, but then it would now be a single-family home, which wouldn't work very well with the actual shape of the property. I guess other than that, I wanted to comment that the way that we got into this, it was said, is that the zoning in the past was R2 in this neighborhood, and we built an R2 property, and then other people came in and they built single-family homes. And of course, I wouldn't demand that they change what they did, but we made our choice in accordance with what the current zoning was when, well, not we, but the people who built it before my family owned it, which I believe was actually another relative of mine that I did not know. But and now the city has gone and changed what their plan is for the area, and even though we followed all the guidelines, it seems like we are at the mercy of all of you to decide just to change it. And I guess I'm really afraid about the possible consequences that could come from this, and I don't see a lot of value for my property specifically being on this list. I know that I looked at the map of zoning. There are some cases where there are individual properties that are zoned differently than those around them. If you look out my front door and look into the neighboring properties, there's 3 duplexes across the street. There's a bunch of high-density apartment buildings around me, and so my building is not out of place with the things that are around me. I'm right on the edge of this area that's being rezoned. Most of it is medium and high-density residential around us, so I don't think that that the property is really strange where it's at. And so I hope that as you consider this, you'll answer like what benefit is my property specifically being on this list, and if you can't come up with like a great benefit for my property being on this list of properties, I hope that you will choose to remove it, because it really does cause an issue for me and my family and if the city. And I don't think simply having uniformity or having like a pretty looking map where everything's the same color is really necessarily beneficial. I understand that it looks nice, but I don't think that there's any reason that we should do that. So, is there any follow-up questions from any of you?
I was just going to comment, Jeff, that first of all, thanks for coming tonight, and absolutely, it's a public hearing, and that's why it's on here. We welcome your comments. You shouldn't apologize for coming to talk to us. We're glad to have you come and speak to us. And essentially, I think the way you described essentially how things would work are accurate. One is it would remain a duplex for forever unless destruction occurred, or if the owner chose to do otherwise. If the property sold, the existing use would be maintained too. Again, unless there's again a destruction and so forth. So the issue for you, and you described it properly, is it could stay the way it is unless something unfortunate happened to the property. So I just want to say you're spot on and your understanding there.
Okay.
Could I comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff, I fully understand what you're saying. Personally, I had a property like yours, and we inherited it from my wife's father, and it was a duplex that was built in 1936 off of Summit Street in Iowa City. It was zoned R1 in the 50s. That house, or that duplex, was there since 1936. It's been maintained. In 2008, it caught fire on one half of the duplex. That duplex was replaced, and that duplex is still there. And it's been maintained. The duplex is nicer than it was ever intended to be when it was built. So, you know, I know you have a concern about this, but if the building is maintained, and there's it is 60%, right, Jim? If it's destroyed over 60%, it goes to R1. But again, I really believe that if you maintain that building and that house, nothing changes. Nothing changes.
Okay. I don't know that I exactly understand about what you mean in terms of maintain. Like I think that a lot of these things that I described, a tornado hitting, I mean, people don't intentionally set fires to their houses. And I think a 60% repair cost can actually be achieved very easily. Like if there was a fire in one part of the home that caused smoke damage to another part of the home, it's not, I don't think that literally 60% of the woodworking of the property is destroyed would result in 60% of the value. And as I said, I'm not comforted by this grandfathering in. I think that, again, if you choose to vote for this, I hope that you will explain to me why it's beneficial to have my property on this list and what the city gets from it. I don't fully understand that.
It's not beneficial for 10 years, it's beneficial for the next 30 years. or
Okay,
40
can you
years.
explain to me how it's beneficial, though, in 40 years that my property is rezoned as an R1?
Well, why would yours specifically be any different than anybody else's?
Because mine is currently a duplex, and
there are other
if we're
duplexes
trying to
that are-
achieve
We're trying to do.
historical protection of this neighborhood, if we're trying to achieve houses being zoned the way that they're being used, both of those things, that's the stated purpose of this rezoning, both of those things would support keeping my house the way that it is. Can you explain to me why you're saying that it would be beneficial to rebuild it as a single-family home in the future? I don't understand the benefit at all.
Kevin, can you address what grandfathered in, and when he's referring to that?
I think, as John said, he explained it right, that as long as it's not destroyed, he can sell it and everything like that. And remember, there are, as Jim said, there are 34 properties in this rezoning that are being changed, like Mr. Connor's property. It's not just his property also. So there are 34 different uses that are being changed, like Mr. Connor's, and most of them are from R2 to R1.
And the 60% came from?
The zoning code, that is what it's required. That's the standard for if it's destroyed. If you remember, there was a fire on Boston Way on the apartment. That apartment complex is rebuilt in that same spot. So,
And the 60% is decided by our building department or firefighters?
It's actually in the zoning code.
But I mean, of the specific home.
Who determines that?
Who
the last time
determines how much?
It
It's
is
60% of the fair market value of the home at the time of destruction.
So when the flood occurred, we asked for bids and everything to put that back together. That's how we determined the percentage of damage, and we used the assessed value that was assessed by the county assessor. So the last time we really did that in a full scale method was after 2008, and we had basically people brought in bids, and most of the time it was we had some insurance bids and flood insurance people who would put together estimates to do that. So I would assume in a fire stand there would be an insurance type of estimate to put that back together also.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around. I have lived in a duplex that we had a fire and we rebuilt, and so I'm just.
I would like to say that I'd be comfortable with leaving Mr. Connors and the one next, just leaving them as they are. They're across the street is multiple housing. And
I think the next door one's the same boat, though. That's a single family.
it's a single family.
Can you
Well-
show me, Jim, where we're talking here?
We're talking about right up in
That would be
here,
okay.
Right
I
here.
mean, Yeah.
And that neighborhood, that whole area is kind of,
So we're,
um,
right here.
Yeah.
is that the church that is?
Yeah,
is
that's the church.
The white
Yep.
thing is the church.
So the area we're talking about is right in here.
Mhm.
So, again, we've had many discussions about this area, and the best solution is to zone it all as one. And I'm going to stick to that because it's.
Is
you know, we
912
start
single?
That's
cutting
the
away
church.
one or
That's
two.
their
I mean, that's why.
And then
Coralville's
his
the
is
way
right
it
next
is.
to it, and then
I
there's
mean,
another.
because I totally
Open,
understand your
house.
frustration and your concern. But one of the things that concerns me a little bit is that, is there a process for appeal? Do we have a process? you know, how do we determine who is exempted and who is not? Because without any type of process, or, you know, we could easily have multiple people coming and asking for an exemption. If we do it for one person, then, you know, how do we determine who else we do it for?
I guess a couple things, Jeff, just to try to answer some more questions. For the record, Jeff and I were colleagues for years and years at West, so, you know, I think when you talk about why just your house and what is it about that, and about, you know, do we want everything to be color coded? Just there's laws of physics. There are kind of laws of neighborhood development, laws of civil city planning. I think best practices and laws of that nature do say it is good to have some continuity and consistency in a neighborhood. So that's kind of why we went to kind of big colored blocks. So we do have some again, consistency and continuity. I think of everything I've heard you talk about, I guess I'm a little struck about your concern about, you know, the what if a disaster happens. I understand there's no way to guarantee that a disaster is not going to happen, but at the same side, I guess I'm thinking, God forbid a disaster happens, and it's 60% plus, and then you're forced to rebuild at R1, but then you'd be able to customize that build to whatever you wanted to make it as similar to what you're in right now. Or what am I missing there?
So,
No.
so what I'm saying here is that the way that the property is structured, it's not like if it's got an L shape. The property has an L shape, and it is not like you drive up to it, you know it's a duplex. And unless we're going to like redig the basements and relay the foundations and things like that, when we're replacing the parts of the property after the 60%, I think it's going to maintain the same shape. All right, it's not the shape or the structure it's the functionality that I'm concerned with. And I also don't think it's a very appealing house if you're gonna get it as a single family dwelling. I think somebody who is looking for a house would be like, this is kind of weird that this is this shape of this house. It works very functionally as a duplex, but as a single family dwelling, it doesn't make very much sense. And I think rebuilding it, we would be forced to probably keep the same general shape just because it would be impractical cost-wise to reshape the property. And I heard that of these 154 units, there were 30 or so duplexes, and I think the point being made there was that I'm not alone in this. But what I hear from that is that I'm not alone in this, that there's a lot of people who are in the situation that I'm in, and I would encourage them that when you ask what the process they should have, their process should be coming to the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting as I did, and coming to the City Council meeting as I did, to try and ask that they be considered. And I see that none of these 34 other people have shown up to do that, and that means that
So this is our process, and he is fulfilling.
And there may be
the
other people in the
necessity of the
audience that are
process.
waiting to speak too.
Okay.
So why don't we wrap it up?
Yes,
So,
yeah. I agree, and I apologize if anybody is waiting there. I just saw one other gentleman at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting who I don't think I see here, and that's why I assumed that there was no one else.
Go ahead.
I was just, what were you going to propose, or what was your idea?
Well,
You
I'm
kinda
just
got cut
saying,
off, so I just wanna hear what
I'd
your
like to
thought is.
honor his persistence in this, and that he is following our process, and I really appreciate that. And I don't have a problem with giving those two top one, his place and the next one.
But the next one is a single-family house that would be the same, they had the same issue.
It's
No,
it's a
well,
duplex next door to
It
us.
still could be.
Next
But
door to
they're not
us
objecting
on
to that.
917 is
Okay.
also a duplex.
912 is single family.
912 is a church.
Well, just,
912 is
yeah,
the church.
912 is the church, and then yours, and then the next one, can we just leave them the way they are
Right.
now?
And there are 3 duplexes across the street, and 920 through 902 are all apartments. Abdana Court is duplexes and threeplexes. 915 is a large apartment building that was just built there. That's the Coral Ridge apartment building that was built in that place, and that's a new addition to the neighborhood within the last year or so. If you did a 200 feet sweep around my house, or 300 feet sweep, I am not very good with the numbers, but if you went out just a little ways beyond my direct block, but including all of this neighborhood, you would find that it is primarily medium and high density housing. So of the what we got, 11 properties on my block, there are 2 duplexes, there are 8 single-family residences, and there is 1 church. And so, so I see how in the block that's the case. In terms of everything else that's around it, it's multifamily dwellings. So we're not unique here. And again, I'll not take up any more of your time. I appreciate you hearing me out. I think that I've said my piece, and I've held you longer than I intended to. And I hope that you'll give it consideration.
We're happy to hear from you.
And
yeah.
I hope that you'll consider what you would do if your family was in this situation and they bought a property expecting one thing, and then they were told. And I'll tell you, I'm frugal with money, and I'm very safe about the things that I do. And this was not us making a bad decision in staying with this property. It was that we didn't understand that the city council was going to zone it one way and then come back and zone it another way in some year in the future. So they built this expecting continuity from the city of Coralville. And I think a lot of this, is not my problem that I created. It's a problem that was created by the city of Coralville by zoning it one way and then changing their minds about how they wanted it zoned. And again, I hope that you will consider what it would be like for your family to go through the same thing. And I don't want to be forced to leave my home, but I also see a situation where and I'm always a worst case thinker. I know that, but I feel like we have to be that way when it comes to a house, right? That's why we buy insurance, right? Because we're worst case thinkers. We don't simply say, well, it's not likely that my house is going to burn down. It's not likely that my house is going to flood. And then we don't buy the insurance. We buy it because we plan for the worst case. And I think that's what I'm trying to do here. So,
Okay, Jeff, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak to us tonight on this topic? Okay. Did we receive any written comments? I'm going to close the public hearing, then we can.
I have 3 property owners objecting to their properties being changed. Don Oxley at 808 owns 808 6th Avenue. Caleb Sherman owns 805 and 810 6th Avenue and parcel 10052530001. And Tim Simpson owns properties 502 7th Avenue, 707 and 709 5th Street.
You have the people that wrote the letters in favor of the zoning?
I have no.
No, we do. We do.
Hmm?
We've got letters in favor.
You
of
do. The city clerk does.
Okay.
And we did also, just wanted to verify that we did send letters also to everybody within 200 feet of these people, so not just letters to the people being rezoned, also to the surrounding area. So there was quite a lengthy mailing for both public hearings at the planning and zoning and the city council meeting.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and now we'll have Don read the ordinance, and then we'll discuss them further.
Ordinance number 2019-1005, an ordinance amending the Coralville zoning ordinance, the same being ordinance number 664 as previously amended, rezoning certain property located within the corporate limits of the city of Coralville, Johnson County, Iowa, and generally known as multiple properties south of I-80, west of First Avenue, north of 5th Street, and east of 20th Avenue Place from R2 two-family residential district to R1 single-family residential district, from R3 mixed housing residential district to R1 single-family residential district, and from R3 mixed housing residential district to R2 two-family residential district. Is introduced for adoption, first consideration by Councilmember Dodds, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Goodrich. Okay, now discussion.
I was just going to ask if we had heard from any of the other 34 property owners. And
I heard, we have
the
Thor's
ones that
letters.
Thor has.
And we heard from Mr. Connor, and we also heard from gentleman on 5th Street, I can't recall his name right now, that owns a duplex as well.
And I did also hear from one that was a duplex that was in favor of changing to an R1.
So Thor, the ones that you received, are those duplexes that are against being R1?
I'm not sure I know some of them are duplexes, but I don't know which ones are.
I do know one chunk is actually at the end of the, is it 6th Avenue or 8th
It's this
Avenue
right here.
that are vacant lots at this point also. Yeah, Jim had that.
Vacant lots?
Yes.
It's a vacant lot.
There's 3 vacant lots up
Okay.
there right now.
So there's no
There's no house
housing on
of
there.
any
No.
kind on
Yeah.
there.
There's no houses, and in fact, part of that is in the flood zone.
I'd just like to note that we did get a list. Just so everyone knows, we do have a list of all the people that are, all the properties.
I think the other thing that's important to point out is that this is just the first reading of this. So we'll have 2 more readings of this, so, you know, if we continue to hear from folks or, you know, we still have some time to kind of look things over if we need to.
And that's what I was gonna say. Jeff, I'd like to get together with you before the next meeting and take a look at your neighborhood and do all that, so I will definitely do that. I'm gonna vote for tonight for the first one, because
This
we've
is
taken a
not-
lot of time to put this together, but I'd be happy to meet with you on this.
I mean, and I can definitely, you know, empathize with, your thoughts on it, because it is kind of an unusual neighborhood. I actually drove by it the other day after I received your email, just to take kind of a second look around there. And you're right, there are quite a few duplexes and you know, apartments around there. The church is there. But, you know, one of the things that we are kind of hoping for with these changes is not necessarily uniform colors on a map, but like the uniformity of the neighborhoods, so that, you know, in the future, there's some consistency, and that it's not as patchwork as it is right now. But I think another thing, I mean, I don't know if we did want to talk about what it would, you know, if there were individual situations that we would need to listen to. Like I said, my concern is that if we do it for one person, then what stops
But
us from doing it for
My
everybody?
point is, this is our process, and so there aren't any other people here. And so this is, we have had, they received letters, they've, you know,
But are
they've
there-
had a chance.
Are there
to make
criteria that I mean, I'm wondering if maybe we should develop some criteria to look at.
I don't think this is a punitive thing. This is a
Yeah.
positive thing. We're trying to make the community better. We have a lot of R1 homeowners that are upset with duplexes that are
right.
not keeping up to standards. And we're trying to keep the neighborhood solid. Now, once we've gone through this, we've selected where we want the zoning, and I think we should stick to it. The building department has done an excellent job in communicating what we are intending on doing, and we are not intending on it being punitive to anyone. We are making a good, solid community. We're making this area an R1 single-family dwelling. If you start chipping away at it, it will be chipped away continually. And it will go from R1 to R2 to R3 to all apartments. Then there will not be any affordable R1 housing. That's my point. There will not be R1 housing if we start chipping away at what we've decided. And we've sat here and we've been working on this for almost a year now. And now we come to the council meeting to make our decision, and now we want to make more criteria. And we've had the criteria, and I want to vote. I want to do the vote, and if you want to have a discussion, we'll have 2 more discussions about it.
Yeah, I'm going to vote in favor of this, for sure.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Goodrich.
No.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Okay, ordinance passes its first reading, 4-1 with Goodrich voting in the negative. Thank you very much. Item 10, bonds. This is a bond issue that will finance the final installment of the First Avenue improvements in the annual pavement preservation program. Resolution, Don? Yep.
Resolution authorizing and approving a loan agreement awarding the sale, providing for the issuance of general obligation bonds, Series 2019A, and providing for the levy of taxes to pay the same, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Goodrich, seconded by.
Second.
Second by Foster. Discussion? Roll call.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Resolution passes all ayes. Item 11, amendments to the urban renewal area. This is an amendment that will add projects to the Mall and Highway 6 urban renewal plan. The consultation was held on Monday, the April 12th, or will be held on Monday, April 12th, and the public hearing will be on April 23rd at our council meeting.
Excuse me, I'd like to make a correction. The consultations for both of these will be April 11th.
Oh, okay.
This is not a
Scratch.
Monday.
Change that to April 11th. Okay. Don?
Resolution setting a date for consultation and a date for public hearing on amendment number 12 to the Coralville amended and restricted urban renewal plan for the Coralville urban renewal area, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Foster, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Goodrich. Discussion?
Yeah, once again, both these are just adding projects. There's no area added to either of these urban renewal plans. So those will be coming back to you in 2 meetings. So we'll give time for the supervisors and the school districts to have any comments before they come back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Roll call?
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Resolution passes all ayes. Item 11B is essentially the same thing with the public hearing on April 11th.
Resolution setting a date for the consultation and date for public hearing on amendment number 8 to the Coralville amended and restated urban renewal plan for the Coralville urban renewal area, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Gross, seconded by.
Second.
Second by Gill. Discussion? Roll call.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Resolution passes all ayes. Item 12, Iowa River Landing Improvements 2019 project. This is setting a public hearing for April 9th and a bid date for and a bid date also on April 9th. It's for the plans and specs for receiving bids for improvements to the Iowa River Landing District. As I recall, it's a utilities project on 2nd Avenue between 7th and 9th Street. Don?
Resolution setting a public hearing on the plans, specifications, estimate of cost, and form of contract, ordering bids, setting a date for the receiving of said bids, and directing posting of the bid letting, all for the Iowa River Landing East 2nd Avenue Utilities Improvements Project 2019, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Gill, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Dodds. Discussion? Roll call.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross. Gill.
Aye.
Resolutions, all ayes. Item 13 is stormwater services. This is an agreement with Shive Hattery that would provide staff assistance while our stormwater coordinator, Amy Foster, is off on maternity leave. And they would fill in and help the engineering department with our stormwater program.
Resolution approving a professional services agreement with Shive Hattery, Inc. for stormwater services, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Dodds, seconded by.
Second?
Look at my, gross?
Who said that?
I work in a junior high, so I gotta talk like a junior high boy. So, yeah,
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Oh, we'd like to congratulate Amy.
Yes.
yeah.
Thank her for all her hard work and hope she enjoys her time off.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Resolution passes all ayes. Item 14 is consolidated transit funding application. This is considering us setting a public hearing on April 23rd for our annual application to the Iowa DOT for transit funding.
Resolution setting a public hearing on the City of Coralville fiscal year 2020. The Iowa Department of Transportation Consolidated Transit Funding Application, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Goodrich, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Foster. Discussion? Roll call.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Resolution is approved, all ayes. Item 15, temporary access easement. This is an easement that we'd like to grant Mid-American Energy Company as associated with the I-80 and I-380 interchange reconstruction project.
Resolution approving a temporary access easement agreement with Mid-American Energy Company related to the I-80, I-380 interchange reconstruction, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Foster, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Gill. Discussion. Roll call.
Gross.
Aye.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Okay, the resolution is approved, all ayes. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented or amended.
Move to approve the consent calendar, items A through P inclusive.
Second.
Moved by Gill, seconded by Dodds. Any discussion? Roll call.
Gill.
Aye.
Dodds.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye. Consent calendar is approved, all ayes. Item 17, city administrators report.
Nothing at this time.
Nothing, okay. Item 18 is mayor's report. I just wanted to mention tomorrow is, well, this whole week has been severe weather week, and tomorrow specifically, there'll be a tornado drill. So the sirens will be going off in our community sometime between 10 and 11 in the morning. So get ready for that. And I also want to let the council know that they should feel just a little bit safer after tomorrow night. Tomorrow night I go to school for I'll become a certified storm spotter. I take some storm spotter training. So
So you stand outside?
Are
when
you
the tornado-
chasing?
I have a legitimate reason to run out when the sirens go off.
And then if you're not in town, the mayor pro tem stands out?
That's
Are you a trained storm spotter?
No, I'm not.
I think I'll stop at that. And we'll go to the city attorney's report.
I have nothing, Kevin.
Nothing.
Committee and council members. Lori, do you want to start down here?
Oh, it's just nice for it to be spring and see people out on the golf course. Brown Deer is open.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Great. Jill?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a business owner contact us about the sign ordinance, and I wondered, since we're done with budget now, if that was going to be moving up on the list of our things to do.
Yeah, we've got actually a report from the group that worked with us on that.
Okay, so we can address her
Mhm.
concern. Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
Tom?
I have nothing. Potholes are being filled, I guess. That's good. Good. Everything's good.
Mitch?
Well, first of all, I apologize for being late. I was at practice and there's a track meet going on and a school bus blocked my exit, and then I couldn't get to the locker room. I didn't want to change back in the parking lot. That could be problematic. So sorry, I'm still wearing practice attire. And one of my two things I was going to say, I was going to mention the sign ordinance as well because of the email. But lastly, I wanted to give, I think staff and us a little bit of a kudos because of I was really taken aback by the front page. I think it was the Register story about the massage parlors in the Sunday newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we didn't get mentioned, which isn't shocking, but I really am glad that we're as proactive. We were doing last September what, a lot of people are just now realizing is a major issue. So I'm really glad that we as a city were that proactive on a really serious topic. That's all I've got, Mayor.
Very good. Megan?
I just have one thing. I wanted to mention that this Friday, March 29th, the Coralville Food Pantry will be hosting a global potluck at the library from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. We'll have lots of different dishes and cuisines from around the world, and it's a great way to highlight the wonderful diversity that we have in our community. So I hope to see everybody there. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gill, seconded by Gross. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.